Imagine now, if you could, a place. Not one you can see with your eyes, but one you feel. A space where time has stretched and shrunk 1,000 times, where the very air holds a memory. You can feel it, a profound silence. A silence that is not empty, but charged, filled with echoes, with presences that have no form yet weigh heavily. It's like entering a vast, forgotten cathedral, without roofs, without walls, only the immensity of the sky above. And beneath your feet, a land that has witnessed so much. You perceive a shadow, a colossal shadow, not of an object, but of an idea, of a force that shaped the world. Think of the whispers the wind carries from centuries past. They are not words you can understand, but they tell you a story of something that was so grand, so intrinsic to the very earth, that its absence today is almost more potent than its presence. It is the echo of a monumental work, something that was not built in a day, nor in a decade, something forged with the patience of mountains and the ambition of rivers that change their course. You can feel the meticulousness, the foresight, the scale of a vision that extended beyond the horizon. Take a moment. Feel that weight in the air. It is the memory of a capacity to organize and execute that seems impossible, as if an entire civilization had agreed to raise something that defied time. Look around you. There are no buildings, only the earth. But in that earth, the immense distance between 2 points, perhaps, the way the terrain seems to have been shaped by a will that is no longer present. And you feel that this power was not just of swords or armor, it was something more, something that permeated every fiber of their existence, an invisible network of connections, of logistics, of a mindset that made the unheard of possible. Think of an ancient road, not just any path, but a straight, solid line that crosses mountains and valleys, a stone backbone that even today defies erosion. It was not merely a means to get from point A to point B, it was a declaration, an extension of their will, a silent demonstration of their capacity to mold the earth, to master it. That capacity, that discipline, that collective vision, it was not something you could simply copy with new armor or a better spear. It was the result of a system so profound, so ingrained in every aspect of their being, that imitating it would have meant reconstructing not just an army, but the entire world. It's a complex question, isn't it? A question that floats in the air, dense as morning fog. A question that leads us, little by little, to search for the imprint, to decipher the shape that immense shadow left marked on the earth. You feel how the mist enveloping you slowly begins to yield. It doesn't vanish suddenly, but dilutes, revealing not a defined figure, but the outline of something immense, a force, a persistence that seems to have been etched into the very geography. Little by little, you understand. It's not a name that emerges, but the resonance of a constant, implacable stride. It's the certainty that here, once, there was a will so powerful that it redrew the world in its image. Imagine. Look around you, through the veil of time. Observe how the earth, once wild and capricious, suddenly yielded,
how entire forests were opened, how rivers were tamed with bridges that still defy time. A network, a spider web of stone and sweat that spread relentlessly. Roads, straight as arrows, cutting through mountains and swamps, connecting points that were once distant kingdoms. You feel the pulse of those routes beneath your feet thousands of years later. Every stone a syllable in a tale of dominion. It was the first time a power, not divine, but human, left such a profound and organized mark on the planet. Cities that sprang up where before there was only scrubland, fortifications that rose like permanent scars on the horizon. They were not mere buildings, they were declarations, silent affirmations of a presence that had no intention of leaving. Think of the borders, not just lines on a map, but stone walls, watchtowers, camps that transformed into lasting settlements. Each one a heartbeat in the immense machinery, tangible evidence that for every warrior on the battlefield there was a legion of builders, engineers, organizers who transformed chaos into order. This imprint was not ephemeral. It embedded itself so deeply that even today, walking along European, African, or Asian paths, you can feel the echo of those steps. You can see the foundations of modern villages built upon ancient ruins. It is the heritage of a civilization that not only conquered, but also built its legend, brick by brick, mile by mile. The implication is profound. This capacity to mold the physical environment, to leave such a vast and enduring imprint, not only ensured its dominance, but also laid the groundwork for everything that came after. It changed the way people moved, traded, and even thought about space and connection. It was a map forged in the stone itself, guiding future generations, even when they didn't know who had put it there. But how was it possible? What invisible structure sustained such a work, such ambition, such a monumental transformation of the world?
Imagine for a moment, not just the warrior who rises, clad in armor. Look beyond the gleam of the metal, beyond the visible strength of his muscles. Beneath the surface, there existed another armor, one that protected not a single man, but an entire empire. A silent network woven with the patience of centuries, sustaining every step, every conquest. Think of the roads, not simple dirt paths, but arteries of stone, carved with an obsession that borders on the divine. From the heart of Rome, these veins stretched kilometers upon kilometers, crossing mountains, traversing valleys, uniting the Mediterranean with the desolate north, the desert's heat with the mist of the furthest island. Every stone, every mile of these roads represented an immense effort, a colossal investment in time, in resources, in engineers who knew how to master the land. They not only allowed the swift and coordinated advance of the legions, but they were the lifeblood that nourished the army. Through them flowed supplies, grain, weapons, urgent messages, a logistics system that spread like an ancient tree, its roots deep and its branches infinite. And they weren't just roads. They were aqueducts that carried water, vital for cities and camps. They were permanent forts and camps strategically situated, forming a chain of protection and resupply. They were a communication system, a network of watchtowers and messenger posts that allowed Rome to react with astonishing speed. All this invisible backbone, was what gave meaning to the warrior's strength. Without it, the most formidable legion would have been just a group of isolated men fighting against hunger and distance.
It was the infrastructure, the logistical and administrative muscle that allowed that empire to operate on a scale never before seen, nor replicated with the same efficiency. Every movement, every victory, every expansion rested upon these foundations that no one saw at first glance. A tangle of ingenuity, planning, and an unbreakable will to build and maintain. This was what transformed the warrior into part of an unstoppable machine. And it is here where the magnitude of the challenge begins to reveal itself. Because this structure, this silent network, was not built in a day, nor with the decision of a single man. It was the result of something deeper, something forged in the crucible of a unique identity.
And now, feel the focus narrow. Leave behind the vision of vast roads, of the invisible strongholds that connected the empire. Allow your gaze to settle on a single man, not on his shining armor, not on the spear he held, but on what lay within. Beneath that cold metal, beneath the sweat and dust, something more pulsed. It was not simply a trained body, a war machine. It was a mind, a spirit, molded, transformed in a crucible of fire and discipline. Imagine the young recruit, still uncertain, perhaps afraid. He arrives in a world where everything is stripped away. His name, his origin, his individual fears, everything melts away. He is taught not only to wield a sword, but to think as part of a whole, to feel that his breath was not just his own, but of the legion, of Rome. Every step in the march, every hammer blow in the forge, every cold night under the stars were small acts of a silent ritual, a ritual to erase the I and forge a we. His dedication sprang from a root much deeper than simple obedience. It was a visceral belonging, a loyalty woven with the sweat of his comrades, with the shared oath beneath the imperial eagle. The sacramentum, a sacred commitment that bound him to his comrades, to the legacy of the Republic or the Empire, to the gods themselves. It was not a mere contract. It was a promise etched into the soul, reinforced with every victory, with every loss, with every collective sacrifice. Thus, when they faced the enemy, you did not see merely a warrior. You saw the echo of generations of honor. You felt the strength of 1,000 wills united into one. Their discipline was not imposed solely by the centurion's whip, but by the profound shame of failing their brothers, by the unbreakable desire to uphold the reputation of their cohort, of their legion. This forging of the spirit, this alchemy of the soul, created a resilience that went beyond physical strength. It allowed them to endure the unendurable. It gave them the will to advance when the body could no longer, to hold the line when logic screamed retreat. It was the difference between a group of armed men and an invincible force, born of a shared identity and an unshakable purpose. A loyalty so ingrained, so profound, that it could not be bought with gold, nor imitated with a simple instruction manual. It was the result of a monumental commitment, a commitment that, in time, would reveal itself as a price very few in history could even dream of paying. Now allow your mind to glide towards the deeper truth. The true secret, it didn't lie in a gleaming weapon or a clever tactic. It wasn't a formula that could be written down and handed over. It was the echo of a price whispered through the centuries. Imagine the burden, the weight of a collective will forged over generations. It wasn't just the gold. It wasn't just the polished metal of 1,000 legions. It was time. The incalculable torrent of time that flowed century after century, pouring into the same vision. Think of the infrastructure we've already touched upon. Those roads, they weren't just paths. They were paved veins irrigating the body of an empire. To build just one of them, you needed thousands of men, dedicated, organized, for years. And then to maintain it, to repair it, to defend it, to ensure that the supply caravan, vital information, reinforcements flowed ceaselessly. Not for a year, not for a decade, but for centuries. It was an investment so profound, so deeply rooted, that it merged with the very identity of the state. Think of the training of a legionary. Not just the hours on the training field, it was a culture that from birth subtly prepared the citizen for that possibility, that demand, a social expectation, an education that, though not military in itself, cultivated discipline, respect for the law, loyalty to the collective. The sense of belonging that beat in the soul of every man is not improvised. It is sown in the cradle and cultivated in the home over many, many lives. To recreate such a system, another kingdom would not only need the gold of 1,000 treasures, it would need the infinite patience of the mountains. It would need a society willing to commit to that same vision, generation after generation, to accept the discipline, the sacrifice, the vision of a greater good embodied in the power of the state. It's a vision that few peoples could even conceive, and even fewer sustain. A profound implication that Roman military greatness was not a superficial layer. It was the bone marrow of their existence, and that marrow cannot be transplanted. It demanded a collective sacrifice so vast that for many the price was simply unbearable. Perhaps for that very reason other peoples watched. They observed with awe, and then each, under their own sun, chose their own path, their own way of being.
And with that understanding, you slip into a new dawn. Not everyone lived under the direct shadow of Rome. Not everyone felt the same pulse in the earth. There were other horizons, other voices in the wind. You felt those gazes from distant kingdoms, from tribes inhabiting deep forests or infinite deserts. They, too, watched. You saw the power. You felt the weight of those ordered marches. You understood the iron logic, the imposing machinery. They were neither blind nor ignorant. They were simply different. Imagine the leader of a Germanic tribe, with the morning mist clinging to his skin, observing the Roman standards in the distance, or the Parthian noble whose armor shone with the gold of 1,000 battles, listening to the rumors of the legions. They had their own warriors, their own gods of war, their own ways of honoring valor. It wasn't a lack of ingenuity, no. It was a deeper understanding. Like knowing that a majestic sequoia can only grow where its roots find the exact type of soil and water it needs. To try to transplant it to desert sand or to the frozen tundra would be an act of desperation, not of wisdom. Its strength was not in replication, but in adaptation. The Parthians, for example, mastered the art of cavalry. Their horse archers were elusive ghosts, their cataphracts walls of iron and fury. Why dismantle a system forged for centuries in the vastness of their steppe, only to adopt the slow, heavy pace of Roman infantry? It would be like trying to teach an eagle to swim like a fish. The northern peoples, clinging to individual freedom, to personal loyalty to their chiefs, to the spontaneous fury of combat, their very identity resisted the uniformity, the impersonal discipline demanded by the legion. The richness of their culture was not measured in miles of paved roads, but in the independence of each warrior. Adopting the Roman model would have meant losing themselves, diluting the soul of their people. It was as if the universe whispered to them, "Your path is unique." Every culture, every people had its own heartbeat, their own values, their own priorities. The grandeur of Rome was not a universal template, but a singular work of art, built upon pillars that only existed there. And this is something that transcends time, isn't it? It is the silent truth that the most brilliant solutions are often the most deeply rooted. What works for one, with its history, its geography, its spirit, can rarely be simply copied and pasted into another context without losing its essence, without breaking. They understood that strength does not always lie in imitation, but in authenticity, in loyalty to who one is. The world was a mosaic of paths, each with its own sparkle under the same sun. And as you delve into this idea, you feel how it resonates.
Throughout this journey, we have felt the magnitude. We have touched the invisible web that sustained an empire. We have heard the heartbeat of a soul forged in a unique crucible. We have understood the whisper of the cost, the immensity of what was needed for all of it to be possible. And so, in this final stillness, a truth is revealed to us. Some wonders, history whispers to us, are ephemeral, brief flashes that gleam and fade, but others are simply unrepeatable, not for lack of ingenuity, nor for a scarcity of ambition in those who came after, but because their very existence was woven with such particular threads, with the precise time and place, with the will and spirit of a people, that to try and copy them would be like trying to force the same river to run through two different beds. The Roman army, at its zenith, was one of those wonders. It wasn't just a set of tactics or an iron discipline. It was the reflection of a society, of a civic identity, of an infrastructure and a worldview that had developed over centuries, a perfect symbiosis between the military and the civil, between ambition and loyalty, between pragmatism and honor. The walls they built, the roads they laid, were not merely engineering feats, they were extensions of their own will, of their sense of order and permanence. Many other empires throughout the centuries looked on with awe. They admired the machinery, the organization, Rome's capacity to project its power across vast territories. They borrowed ideas, of course. They adopted formations, improved armor, copied siege engines. But they never managed to replicate the complete essence, the depth of commitment of each legionary, the vast logistical network that stretched from the senators to the last slave in the mines, the concept of a citizenship that expanded with conquest and integrated the new without losing its own. It was a conjunction of factors that quite simply would not be repeated, because the conditions that forged that greatness were not in a manual. They were in the very land, in the mindset of an era, in the generations that built upon the foundations of those before them. Its legacy, then, is not a book of instructions for victory. It is not a template that can be traced and applied at any other time or place. It is rather an echo, a vibration in the air, a silent reminder. It teaches us that true originality and lasting success often arise from a unique and unrepeatable combination of elements.
It whispers to us that some grandeurs, though fascinating and worthy of study, can never be cloned. They can only be understood, admired, and perhaps serve as a source of inspiration for each to find their own path to a different kind of greatness. A unique, unparalleled path of their own. A memory that persists, like a light slowly fading on the horizon, but whose imprint endures in the darkness of the night.